Okay, so what we're going to cover today is what we call the walking tour. So we're going to be going through the management system to see, how it's put together, how it works, and so on and so forth. And then we'll get into, any questions you have or where we're going to go from here.
Okay.
So let me put up my screen. Okay, so let's see. Oh, so you should be able to see my screen now.
I can.
Okay. So here is, of course, here's the management system itself. And let's go ahead and start with the manual here. Okay, so this is unlike a lot of management systems where they basically restate the entire standard in the manual. This is what we refer to as a synoptic manual, which means the only things that are in here that are things you already have the standard. So there's no sense in repeating the standard. What's in here are those things that are not addressed by the procedures and stuff like that. It's kind of an overview of the entire management system. So you see, we have your logo up here, and then the 9001 quality edition, the serial number, and so on and so forth. Your contact information in here, and then this statement here that the management system you know, uh, is a 9001 base system, um, and that it, complies with those requirements and any environmental health and safety requirements or legal requirements, I should say, for the, you know, um, state of Michigan, Oakland County, and Madison Heights. This statement down here is basically it's a caveat. It just says that the management system is an electronic system. The only valid part of the system is what's on the portal. So if it's seen anywhere else, it's to be considered as reference only and needs to be checked with the portal to make sure it's the current version. We also have down here that we have a correlation matrix, which means, let me just go ahead and open that up, take a look at it. So we have all the requirements of ISO 9001, excluding the definitions and the scope and stuff from the standard, where the standard actually has the requirements, starts at clause 4. And then we have what the requirement is and where in the management system it's actually been addressed. As you can see, we can go through this entire thing and it's all matched up. This is essentially what this would be called as a system audit, because what we're doing is comparing the management system to the standard and showing where everything has been addressed. The applicable things have been addressed in the standard. Okay. The other thing about this is that it's good to have if you're in the middle of an audit and the auditor asks you a question you're not quite sure of what it is he's looking for, rather than to guess. You can basically say, okay, so what is it that we're talking about? What clause of the standard? What subclause? Or something like that. So you can say, okay, well, uh, we're talking about clause 4.4 C. Okay. So we come down here to 4.4. Okay, it's described in each process. It's in the internal and external audits and assessments. It's in the management review. Okay, so that way we don't lead the auditor off on down a rabbit trail or anything like that. The auditors actually like this too because they know exactly what to ask for during their audit. As they're going down, they can just simply say, oh, "Okay, show me your internal, external audits and assessments and your procedure for management review."
Okay.
Okay, so the management system oversight. Somebody has to be ultimately responsible for the management system. Typically, that is the person that the auditor will talk to. So, the MSO, or the management system oversight person, we have you listed down here, and your contact information. Scope of the management system itself. Um, say, make sure that we're correct. We're trying to keep a general. We used to do a lot more detail on these scopes, and the cert bodies kind of came back and said, okay, well, that's all fine and dandy, but really, you only need to be very generic
Okay.
on the scope because that's how it's actually going to be on the certificate. We have it here as the plastic injection molding products in compliance with the current version of 9000.
So with the injection molding, it's a different process than we do. Could you just put like plastic fabrication or plastic molded
Oh,
products?
yeah,
And that kind of leaves it open to all different types of processes.
yeah. Could even get into 3D printing.
Because now we have a client that wants us to do drape forming for parts, which we just won that project. So that kind of just keeps it really open. And I actually would like to get into injection molding too. So that kind of keeps it gets more
Yeah.
generic.
Okay. Good. Okay. In the exclusions, ISO 9001 says that we can exclude because it is for manufacturing and service companies. Uh, you know, certain things just don't apply. So ISO 9001 says that you can exclude, as long as you can justify it, you can exclude anything in the standard that's not applicable to your operation based on what we saw of your operation, stuff like that. We said there's nothing in there that we can actually exclude. Okay, the organization structure. We don't typically put the organization chart in the manual because charts change. And what we do is we have it in one of the directories, and there's a link here to it. So you can click on the link. It's going to take you to the folder,
Oh
as you
wow,
can
look
see
at
here.
that. I didn't realize you can use
Oh,
it.
okay. This way, this can change as much as it needs to. Okay, and we don't have to worry about constantly revising the manual with it. We just keep it out here. You can change it as much as you want, and it just saves a lot of time and hassle of having to go back and um, revise revise the manual. So that gets kind of tedious after a while. Okay. The next thing we have is a quality policy. Is a requirement of 9001. A lot of companies, they used to go to a lot of extent to write these big, flowery kind of quality policies and stuff like that. And they really mean nothing. You know, so who really cares about the quality policy? The auditor.
The auditor. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we did is basically, if you look at the standard, this says almost verbatim exactly what the standard says. That way, there's no confusion. Does it comply with the requirements of the standard or not? It says almost exactly the same thing. So this is something new. This just came out last year, where they did an addendum to the 9001 to include uh, climate change, which was basically two requirements that weren't actually really much of a requirement. So we put a climate change statement in here, and you can see there's not really much to it. It just says that, yeah, we're going to look at it in management review, and we'll deal with it through continual improvement.
Okay.
The statement here just basically says that the policies were established by the top management of the company through the management review. We also have to identify the interested parties. These are non-governmental. Kind of looking at the area and stuff like that. Really couldn't find any particular NGO that would be interested in what you're doing. So we just have it generically kind of written down here. Your company personnel, customer personnel, suppliers of goods and services, and stuff like that. Government interested parties are actually, they are actually interested parties. But we actually have them listed in a different place. That's why we have it down here, that they are actually listed in the regulatory resources, which is down towards the end of the manual.
So what would that be like? I know you mentioned like NGO, but would that also be like a government contractor?
Um, no, it would be basically the city and any regulations that they have for your operation. Um, City, state, and federal.
Okay.
And you'll see we have them all listed out in the regulatory resource. So we actually have a link to them too. May not get you exactly where you want to be, but it's going to get you in the ballpark. This is part of the 9001. It's actually part of ISO. This is called a PDCA, the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle, or a Shewhart cycle, or a Deming wheel, or depending on what school of thought you come from. It was actually developed by Dr. Deming in the 1930s, I believe it was. Anyway, uh, we have our inputs here, which feed into our management system. Management system is in the gold circle here. So we have the management system itself, planning procedures, audits, actions, reviews, improvements coming back into the management system. It's what they call a living system. It's always constantly being reviewed for, improvements. And then with planning, we have our risk assessment here coming out of that. Then we have our reporting requirements, the materials that we're sending on to our customer, and any other paperwork that we need to submit to any entity. So if we look at this, if you were like flying in an airplane, this would be a 30,000-foot view of your management system. You got a little bit of detail, but you're not going to get much. Down here we have the overall system description. So if this was the 30,000-foot view, this is 10,000-foot view. You're getting more detail. Okay, you're coming into Detroit. Okay, so we have the management system manual, which feeds into the procedures, and from procedures it either goes to SOPs and instructions or to forms and records. SOPs and instructions go to forms of records. There's a brief description of what each one of them is over here. ISO is very big on interaction of processes. They like to see those things, and as a matter of fact, back before 2000, as auditors in the field, what we were finding was that there was a requirement of the standard. It was over here. It was perfectly compliant with the requirements of the standard. And then we had another procedure over here. And again, it was completely compliant with the requirements of the standard. They were critical to one another, and there was absolutely no connection to them whatsoever. So along about 2000, when the ISO revised in 2000 from the 1994 previous edition, they said you have to show interaction of processes. These things have to connect so that things that have to work together are actually connected together. That's why we go into this kind of detail to show everything connecting up, and you'll see it even follows through when we go into the procedures themselves. The processing flow is supposed to be just a very brief general overview of what is going on in the company. So I put one in here based on what I think is going on. You can take a look at that and you can make a determination if I got it right or not. And if I didn't, we'll fix it. Okay, again, elements and interactions. So the system is set up with planning procedures, operational procedures, and administrative procedures, just to kind of make it a little easier to find what you're looking for. Um, so you can see it's just basically a diagram saying that they all interconnect with each other. Okay, so now we get down here to page 9, and we're actually getting into real relevant information. Okay, so we have our planning procedures here. Again, everything that can be hyperlinked in this system is hyperlinked. We don't want people to have to go looking for things, because typically when people have to go looking for things, they typically won't go looking for things. Okay, so here's the advanced planning, and then over here we have what the interactions are. What does it interact with? Advanced planning interacts with the developing the risk-based assessment and controls and the identification of legal and other requirements. And then we have our control changes, legal and other requirements, the RBAC. Then we have the operational, calibration, conforming, non-conforming material, and what they interact with over here. And then we have the administrative. You would think that operational would be the biggest one. It's not. Administration is the biggest one.
That makes sense. That's probably the hardest thing I have to do around this place is just
Yeah.
keeping up with all the admin stuff.
Yeah. So continual improvement, document control, emergency preparedness and response. That is not actually a requirement of ISO 9001. However, what we've been finding is more and more uh, states are actually requiring companies to have an emergency and preparedness response procedure. Now, we've seen this. We've done a lot of work with disaster emergency management with colleges and states and stuff like that. And we're finding this is becoming a trend, and especially after the last year when we had all the last couple of years, as a matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
with all the disasters that were going on Florida and North Carolina, South Carolina. So we put this in every system that we have. It's always a good idea. Filing for license permits, internal, external assessments. You can read this for yourself. Okay. Um, then we have a section here for standard operating procedures. Standard operating procedures. You see, we have standard operating procedures and we have instructions. Now we kind of differentiate between the two in the system. Standard operating procedures are directly related to manufacturing. Instructions are related a little more towards administrative kind of things. How do I get into the purchasing program and put in a purchase request or a purchase order? You may have an instruction for that. Again, more administrative kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
We have already included a couple in here. There's an SOP, LOTOP, which is the lockout tagout program, which is a federal requirement, and a lot of companies tend to kind of forget about that one. So
For
we
like
have it
equipment
in.
failure.
Yeah, yeah. And then instructions, we actually have 2 instructions in here. We have an instruction on how to write an instruction. And then there's an instruction on how to write a standard operating procedure, and they're pretty detailed. And then in these interactions, when you're putting in your SOPs or your instructions, when you're putting in your interactions, they don't have to be detailed like they are up here. It can be very generic in here, like the lockout tagout interacts with all equipment. Period. You know, the development, the SOP development, and instruction development, it just interacts with document control. Of course, it's going to interact with other things, but in general, it interacts with the documentation control. This next section is, again, ISO has a very specific, what they call hierarchy of documentation. What we have in here is to show them, number one, we understand that what that hierarchy of documentation is, and this is how it actually is set up in this management system. So level 1 is always external, your standards, your regulations. And the level 2 in this system is your manual and your procedures. Level 3 is your SOPs and instructions, and then level 4 are your records. So if you look at this kind of like a pyramid, you start at the top, and as you go down to the bottom, it gets bigger and bigger. Of course, records being the biggest of all. Normative references is anything that we actually reference in the management system, such as the 9001 standard, and then this 9001 amendment. This is the one that just came out in 2024. The climate action change. So we had to include that. And then we have this ISO 19011 guideline for auditing a management system. Not only is it mentioned in internal external audits and assessments, but we want you to have this because this is the standard for the cert bodies to audit your system. The more you know about this standard, the more of a level playing field you will be on with your auditor. Then our regulatory resources. When we talked about interested parties above, when we said the regulatory interested parties were listed down here, so you can see we have them listed out here. The City of Madison Heights, the general website, and then we have the one specific for businesses. Oakland County, and the Oakland County one for specific for businesses. State of Michigan businesses. Michigan Department of the Michigan EPA equivalent, Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy. And then we have the MyOcean. And then we go all the way up to the federal. So we have the federal EPA and the federal ocean. Now here we have the revision history. What ISO used to require was what they call a master document list that basically told you what all the documents in the management system were, what their current revision level was, whether they were approved or not. And the problem with that was, as auditors in the field, we knew that in most cases, not everyone, but most cases, that document was not going to match the management system because it was separated from the system. It got forgotten a lot. We've seen this all the way up into major corporations like General Motors. It says it's at this level. The document is actually at a different level. So we said we have to eliminate that completely. So before the last revision of the standard, we they still had that requirement for the master document list. We said the directory of the portal is the master document list, and that passed muster with it. They have since eliminated that. But during that time, we said we have to find a different way of dealing with this. So going back in, some of the things that we've worked with and stuff like that. So well, in you're probably familiar with this. Back in the old days, um, when we used to work with blueprints
Yeah.
and sepias down in the United States, at least, down in the bottom right hand corner was a change control block, and it told you everything that happened with that engineering drawing. Every time a dimension changed, every time a tolerance changed, every time a datum point changed, it was all listed on there, and you had a complete history of it from the time it was released to the present. So we're going to use that same method in here. We're going to control each document within itself. So every time this gets revised, we stack the next revision on top so that we always have a complete running history of what happened. So the one on the top will always be the most current revision. And we can go back and we can see through time everything that's happened with the document. So that eliminates a lot of the need for a master document list or retaining old versions of a procedure or something like that. So we can just keep the history right on here. Also in this portal, you go back here, you can see here on this the correlation matrix, you see this V3 on here. If we click on that V3, it also gives us a history of what happened with this document. One of the interesting things and the nice things about this portal is that you can actually restore that document to any point in time past.
Oh,
And
nice.
it will tell you when it was restored, what it was restored to, and it keeps a very good running history of the document. That comes in real handy when you do something foolish like I typically do, which is pull up a blank form and start
Yeah.
writing on it without saving it. And then you get a call from Kim and she says, "What are you doing to my documents?" And I have to beg forgiveness and go back and fix it.
Yeah, that is helpful.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It really is. So basically, you do that, and then you just be, "Oh, okay. Let me save this over in the file that it should have been in, and then I'll go back and then take the blank form and restore it back to the previous version." Okay, so that's the manual. Okay, so let's go back here. Now you see, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to. I think we can do that right here. There. Get it in alphabetical order because it's going to drive me crazy otherwise. The system is split up into three main directories. We have everyday docs, which is where your procedures, your instructions, your SOPs, and your records are. Those documents you use kind of every day. The next one is Mentor. That is a repository for training materials. So, like the video sessions we did have are in the Mentor section. Tech Tools is the repository for blank forms of workbooks.
So
So if
like
we
add
go
blank SOPs are in there.
to the SOPs, let's here I'll show you. Okay, so we have in here we have our administrative procedures, our diagrams, which is where the org chart is. External documents and standards, that's where your copy of 9001, the addendum, and 19011 are going to be. And any external documents to you would be listed in there. your operational procedures, your planning procedures, and then your records. So in the operational procedures, you'll see that we have a folder in here for instructions and we have a folder in here for SOPs. Go into the SOPs, you see there is an SOP blank, and then there is an SOP for lockout tagout program. There's also an example SOP in here just to give you an idea of what an SOP should actually look like.
And then after you save, like if I create a new SOP, do I save it back in this SOP folder?
You can actually, when you pull up the blank and you go over here to file and you click on that, you say save a copy, and then you tell it what you want that copy to be. It can be a PDF or an ODT or a doc or whatever. We'll just leave it as a docx. Okay. Then it's going to say, where do you want it? You know, and you can actually save it right in the same file. You just change the name of it. So you come down here and give it a new name, and then you can save it right in the same folder.
Okay.
Okay. Now what you're going to find is that in every one of these, every directory, there is going to be a blank in there. So if we go back to here, go back into, of course, it jumbled everything now. We go into administrative procedures. You see, there's a blank in there. So if you need to create one, there's already a blank that's already formatted for the administrative procedures. Same thing with the operational and everything. Every directory in here has a blank in it in case you need, including the forms directory. In case you need to create one, there is a blank there so that, you know, it keeps this management system looking consistent. Okay, so let's go back here. Go
Too
back.
bad I don't make chocolate cakes. You're already done.
That is an actual recipe.
Oh, I'm sure.
And if you want to make a really, really good chocolate cake,
follow
use
that.
that recipe. It's amazing. It's fantastic.
I'll have to print it out.
Yeah, but you can see, you'll be able to see how detailed that procedure is. It was actually done as an example for a commercial kitchen.
Cool.
You can see there's you can see how much detail has to be in there so that somebody who's never done it before actually has the information, they can actually do it the correct way. Okay, so we go deeper into everyday docs. We have the administrative. We already looked at those. Your administrative procedures in there. There is a folder in there called job descriptions. Everybody's got to have a job description. I mean, right down to the janitor. Okay. So, and there is a blank in there for job description. And if you open it up, just like the other blanks, there's some information in there. It's kind of like a blank with an instruction. So it kind of tells you what kind of information that you need to have in these different areas. And again, when you're writing job descriptions, don't write War and Peace. Keep them short.
Okay.
What we found out over the years is that we don't like to write long procedures. People don't read long procedures. Okay. So we try to keep them short and succinct. Okay. This thing just does not want to hold that in the right order. Okay. Back into everyday docs. And then we have the records folder down here. You'll see there's records for 2025, 26, all the way through 2029. The ones that are outside of that are basically, they're things that they're not really year dependent. So they can all be, just basically in the main directory. Where we have in like 2025, let's go into there. These would be records that are more year dependent, or if you were looking for something that you might want to be able to go back to a year and actually narrow down. As you see, all the names in here are connected directly to the acronym of the form. So your corrective action report, it's a CAR. Well, the form for that is a CAR-F. So it makes it very easy to find these things. At least we think it makes it easier to find these things. So again, and we give you enough records area to do 5 years. So basically, when you get to 2029 or 2028, just make sure that you take that blank 2029 folder and copy the whole thing over for 2030. So that when you get into 2029, you still have a blank there. Okay. This one, and Kaz, we went through this on the workbook section. This is the only document that sits in that records directory by itself. And that's the legal and other requirements matrix. And that's because, again, that is a one-off document. Once it's created, you really don't ever create another one. You just simply constantly update this one. Okay, so have I completely confused you yet?
It's a lot to take in. Yeah.
Okay, I'm working on it. Okay, let's go back up here. Let's grab one of these procedures. Of course, you've already seen the procedures when we did the other section, but let's get it on the recording. So let's go to let's go to receiving. How's that? Okay, we'll open that up. And again, you have to control click just to get it on the recording. Control click to get these to open up. Unfortunately, you can't simply just point at it and click on it and get it to open up. You have to do the control click. Okay, so in the receiving procedure, okay, again, we have our header up here. We have this MS manual click here. It's kind of like a home button. If you get lost, you can at least get back to the manual. So we have the OR. O stands for operational, and this OR is for receiving. Operational procedure description, very simple, direct. What's happening here? Then we have a process flow. In this one, we actually have 3. And it's basically if everything happens and if generally and everything works exactly the way it's supposed to work, this is what's going to happen in this procedure. And then at the end of it, we always say, okay, well, I did that. Now what do I do? Well, we go give you what the next procedure is. Same thing in this one. We have materials and products that you would be bringing in, consumables like your cutting fluids, even your janitorial supplies and stuff like that. And then what do you do if you have equipment coming in? You'll see a number of things in here that are highlighted in yellow, which means that we need to find out what that actually is. What is the inventory program so we can put it over here? The equipment inventory program and equipment maintenance program. Where are they located so that we can fill that in? We'll do that as part of the review and revision session.
Okay.
And then we have this referencing. Anything that's referenced in the procedure will have a link to it up here, or we'll have a call up to tell you where it is. So typically they're hyperlinked, and just in case the hyperlink doesn't work, we tell you where it's located over here. Split up into 3 sections. You can see inputs, outputs, and the next procedure. Inputs are whatever you will need or may need to complete this procedure. outputs are, what am I going to have when I finish this procedure? And then, of course, the next procedure, where am I going from here? So you can see a lot, not a lot of, I mean, the thing's, well, 6 pages long, but we're dealing with 3 different elements of it, materials, consumables, and equipment. You're going to see a lot of references to the RBAC because that's where our control information is going to be in that control plan. So we don't want to put all that detail in the procedure because we don't want to create a conflict between what the procedure says and what the control plan says. So we reference these things very generally, and then we say, if you want the specifics, go to the RBAC or go to the instruction or go to the SOP. So we also covered, again, we talked about customer consigned products. We have that here. And then at some point at receiving, everything happens the same way. It doesn't matter. So it goes, down here, go to receiving all below. Then we have the consumables section. We have the equipment section. And then we have receiving all, unloading, labeling, inventory, movement, and then what's the next procedure? And then again, our revision table down here. So is there any specific one you'd like to take a look at? Have you had a chance to kind of poke around in here?
I have. I mean, in the past week or two, I have not. But I have, like, when I first got the system, I did kind of go through a bunch of it. Obviously, a lot of it didn't make sense because I didn't have this walkthrough. I mean, go
Okay, so
through.
what would you like to hit on? I mean, you said it didn't make a lot of sense. So let's see if we can
Say the
fix
things
that.
the things that really stand out for me that I really have always felt like I needed for the company is a lot of the standard operating procedures, SOPs. That's always been something that's been really important to me.
Well, let's take a look at those. Let's look at the instruction for doing the SOP. So let's go back here. That is going to be an everyday docs in
Because
the.
like for our product business, like the process to pack
Well,
that box.
yeah, like your machine setup.
Exactly.
Feed speeds and and temps and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That's stuff that it's critical. So you want to make
yeah,
sure somebody's doing it right.
yeah. Because what I find out is, like, it's just in our heads, me and Chris, who works for me,
Right.
and
Yeah.
sometimes we're like, "So what did we do last on this?"
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's document all
So
this.
let's oh, that was the instruction. I'm sorry. My bad.
Yeah, because I feel like having this would solve a lot of our quality issues in general because we just from the start we just know what we're doing. We're not getting into 2 or 3 parts and being like, "Oh yeah, that's right. On this part we did this," and losing material. And
So let's look at the operating procedure development. Okay. Now it's a long procedure. It's a lot of detail in it, but it really is pretty straightforward when you start getting into it. I mean, it's 19 friggin' pages long, for crying out loud.
well,
But there's a lot of pictures in it.
yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Like, okay, so again, we have our references, and just like all the other procedures in here. Okay, then we have the PPE required. Well, none. You're writing something. Okay. General information, just some general information. When should you do an SOP? What are SOPs? Tips for writing an SOP. A lot of time putting this together. The instruction, creating a new SOP document for development. And you can see it tells you how to create and copy. Gives you, like I said, a lot of pictures in here about how to do things, very detailed. like I said, we wanted, just like with the RBAC, we wanted to put enough detail in here so that a person who has never done this before stands at least a good chance of getting it right the first time. Hence why this is so long, because it does have a lot of pictures in there to show you exactly what it'll look like on the portal. So your SOP development, unique title identifier. And again, once you've done one, once you've done a couple of them, you probably won't even come back and reference this.
Is there like, if I wanted to, well, I'll ask you this question first. Do companies sometimes print these out and put them in like a book that people can easily just reference on the floor?
Well, there's one issue with that. Anytime you issue something out like that, it has to be according to the standard. It has to be issued out under control, which means that you have to know that document, where that document is, and that it matches what's on the portal. So the way to get around it, the best way to get around it is if you wanted to put that out on the floor, which is, I mean, a lot of companies do it.
Mhm.
Put it out as a reference only document.
So you just like write reference only on the top? Or...
Yeah, that's right. You just put it in big letters right on the cover of the binder. Reference only. See the portal for the current revision.
I remember you telling me this previously. I don't know if it was related to SOPs, but I remember you mentioning reference only. So that way, if a auditor comes in, they understand it's just reference.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the bottom of every document in here, you'll see the statement that you actually need to put on the folder. It says
Right
reference only. See the portal for the current, So yeah. So
okay.
yeah, and then the only thing you have to remember is when the auditor comes in and says, well, you have this out here. So yeah, but we check it against the portal before we actually use it. It's just for convenience.
Yeah.
Sometimes just knowing how to talk to the auditors.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been auditing for over 40 years, so I know what they're looking for.
Probably just put on the binder really large for reference only. Like this statement. Yeah.
Yeah. SOP is for reference only. Okay. Because when you print them out, they're going to say reference only on them already. So if you look at that one, you can see right at the bottom left-hand corner, there's the statement. And that's on every single document in here. So even if you forget to put it on the binder, it's going to be on there anyway.
Okay.
Okay.
And then what would I print out? I mean, I'm assuming I don't print out all the, how-to steps. Like where would the document start that I would print? Or do you print all 19?
Well, so let's go to the example.
The cake.
Yes. I'm telling you, it is.
I'm going to print it out. I'll do it. I'll send you a picture of it.
Okay.
I'll do it with my daughter.
Because I have made that cake, and it's probably one of the best chocolate cakes I've ever had.
Well, I will teach my 12-year-old daughter how to read a SOP.
There you go. Okay. So operational SOP. Oop. So you're going to print out the entire SOP. Because again, it has all the references in there to definitions. We have our forms and our outputs. We have the whole setup and everything. What's all the expertise required? Who's the clear? What classification is the person who does this? What PPE is required? What equipment is required? You can see there's quite an equipment list.
Yeah.
You wouldn't, just making a cake, you would not think it's that complicated.
Yeah.
And then the whole standard operating procedure.
It even says anti-slip, anti-fatigue mat.
Like I said, it was made for a commercial kitchen, so you probably won't need one of those. Probably got a rug in there anyway.
But I think it's smart. I mean, it cover in some ways. If someone comes and says, they didn't have a fatigue, mat for my knees, and my knees hurt now.
Yeah.
It's like, it's right here. We document it. Here's pictures of it on the floor. Like,
yeah.
CYA.
So get your dry ingredients, get your wet ingredients, the hot water, the oven, allergen safety notice. Big thing in food prep. Keep the area clean, add the dry ingredients, stir, I mean, it goes a lot of detail in here. Like I said, if you've never done before, this is you'll stand a chance of getting it right the very first time. There's a lot of check, notify the chef, pâtissier.
Yeah.
He's got to approve everything. He's quality control. So again, in your thing, when you do the setup before you get ready to run, you're going to have quality approval on it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the same thing. Again, when you're developing it, you want to make sure that you include every single. Well, I mean, you're an automotive guy. You've built engines, right?
I have. And
I mean,
transmission.
know that okay, put the plastic gauge on the journal.
Mm-hmm.
Mark it down to the spec, remove it, and then check it against the plastic gauge on the package, right? It has to be that detailed.
Yeah.
I mean, when you've done it over and over and over again, like you and I have done, we just know that we're supposed to do it. But if you're bringing somebody new in, like an apprentice or something like that, yeah, you want to have it that detailed. You don't want to miss anything. And of course, eventually you guys are going to get bigger. You got to bring in more people, So do you want to have to sit there and go out there with a new person and explain every single thing that has to be done and watch over him and do it time after time until you're sure he's done? Or do you want to have something like this where you can say, follow it and then get an approval?
This is why we're doing it now and not, 2 years, 3 years from now. Because we're talking to some pretty big companies and we've written a ton of quotes in the past 2 weeks. And if any one or two of those or any two of those hit, we're going to be slammed. I'm talking to, I have a contact at SpaceX right now. I'm talking to some big corporate automotive tier 1 suppliers. So things could change drastically in a short period of time.
In a very short period of time. Yeah.
Well, so much, but it's good.
Yeah.
Good
and this eliminates you from you having to micromanage stuff.
Yeah. I would say
everybody knows what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, and how they're supposed to do it.
So I would say my biggest challenge right now is, our primary focus is revenue right now, right? I mean, it's the lifeblood, right?
Yeah.
So, it's finding that additional time to sit down and do all these SOPs and all that, right? Because it's just me and 2 other people. That's been probably the biggest challenge.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, always use your resources.
Yeah.
Because, those people that are making that equipment usually have SOPs for them.
Oh, wow. I'm taking that note down.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, they usually, I mean, if it's not in the manual, they usually have it as a document and you can just ask them for it. Or if they don't have it, then you can probably go on to YouTube and find somebody on there who has a video on how to do it. And then you can just write it up from there.
That is, thank you. I didn't even think about that.
Oh yeah, I mean anything to make it easier. Yeah.
I'll do that.
Okay, so let me let's go back here to this one. I'll show you the lockout tagout program. This was built, I mean, it was right out of the federal statute. So we just basically put it into an order that made sense. Because I mean the regulation was like all over the place. So we just put it into a format that you can actually do it. It's all in there, and including the what we got here. Yeah, I think she's right there. Yeah, I know I misspelled it. To the personal line. Okay. Fix that. There's also a periodic review that you have to do. The federal law requires that you do a periodic review of the people who are doing this. So that's actually even included in here too. And there's actually a form connected to it. So, I mean, I've been doing this stuff for a long time. I've worked as, well, like I said, I spent 13 years in the largest stamping plant in North America, which was the Buicko's Cadillac stamping plant in Grand Blanc, Michigan. 1.5 million square feet under the roof. When those presses were running, the floor shook. I mean, you could actually stand in the middle assembly side and look over into the press room, and you could watch the floor actually flexing.
How many tons?
Oh, let's see. I think the biggest one that they had at the time that I was there was one of the big Komatsu presses, which I think for some, I'm thinking that it was like 4,000 tons.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when they built that, I mean, the press is 2 stories tall, but that's just from the surface. That press goes down 3 stories under the ground. It is mammoth. It is a city block long.
What's underground? Is like another press coming up? So
well, we had, all the drives for it. It was a gang press, which is where you have a press bed, okay, yeah, that runs the entire length of the press, and what you do is you gang your dies in there, so it makes one continuous process. So you have your feeder on the end, and then when it comes into you have your first form die, and then they call it a transfer press. And then it transfers it to the next die, which is going to be either another form, or it's going to be a trim, or it's going to be punching holes, or a hammer, or whatever. So it just keeps going down the line. So think of a sheet of steel that's going to be a fender. So it comes in as a blank sheet of steel on the front end, either a cut blank or off of the coil, and then it's going to come off the other end as a finished fender. ready to go over to assembly.
That's cool.
So they had, when I left there, they had 3 of those big Komatsu presses. So before that, I think was it the big Minster presses? I think that was I think they were 400-ton big presses.
Yeah.
I've seen some big screw ups on those presses too.
Oh, I'm sure when he goes wrong, he goes very
And
wrong.
I've seen him blow a surge tank off of those things and go up and hit the ceiling. I mean, there were 40-foot high ceilings in there. You know, and it would blow that surge tank off, and it would go up and it would put a dent in the ceiling. I've seen him drop a die through the floor and into the basement. Hey, it's
What?
crazy stuff. Oh yeah, yeah. The chain broke on the. They had the big gantry cranes.
Yeah.
And the chain broke, which is really unusual because those things are checked constantly. But it broke, and they were transferring one of the big dies. This die was probably 6 foot long, about 4 foot wide, and maybe about 3-4 foot tall. I mean, that's a lot of steel, and it went right through the floor and right into the basement. I've also seen a guy with both his arms caught in a press.
Well, they didn't come with him after he left.
No, that was a horrendous deal. State police were out there and everything. It was horrible.
That's unfortunate.
But I'm huge on safety, because I have seen some really horrific stuff. Well, I was an ambulance jockey in the Air Force, and even before that, so I've seen some pretty nasty stuff. So I'm very big on safety.
I always tell my people, like, don't save anything. Save yourself first. I don't care if
Exactly.
$2,000 mold that is about to get destroyed. Just get out of the way. Like, just don't save it.
Okay, so let's now that we've got all the gore out of the way. Okay. Any particular one you want to take a look at? Excuse me.
Receiving, shipping. Was above it.
Oh, above here.
Yeah. I actually want to talk about calibration, like, and when is that necessary? Because, like, that's
well, there are several theories on that. And if you go, you know what Duran's quality control handbook is?
do not.
Oh, okay. It is a book that was put out decades and decades ago by J.M. Duran, who was like one of the top gurus in quality control, along with Deming and Schuhart and the others. In fact, him and Deming worked together at Bell Labs back in the 20s. But he wrote the definitive book on quality control called the Quality Control Handbook, which I still have my copy here. And they talk about calibration. There are several ways of doing it. You can do it by lapse time. You can do it on a schedule, or you can do it by use. Any one of them are perfectly valid. So if you have a piece of equipment that doesn't get used that much, you might want to say, okay, when we hit X number of calibrations or X number of uses on this machine, we'll calibrate then. So I had or you can do it based on statistical studies. Okay, so I had an optical comparator in my lab. I bought it out of General Motors. It was huge. The screen on it was like 3 foot across. This thing was built in the 1940s, and it was always calibrated every single year. They calibrated this thing. I went back through the records because when I bought it, I got all the calibration records. I got binders full of them. Going through it, I found that in all of that time from the 1940s, that thing had only been adjusted one time because that thing was built so well. So what we did is that instead of doing a calibration on it every year, we set the calibration time out to 3 years because we knew there wasn't anything going to happen to the thing because we had statistical data to back it up. Typically, like things that you're using on a daily basis, like calipers, micrometers, you would probably have those set at every 6 months. And they're fairly easy to calibrate. Basically, you're not, unless you're using the older ones, you're probably not, you're doing more of a verification than you are a calibration.
Mhm.
Things like CMMs, they have to be done every year. Your weight scales have to be done every year. And if you have a piece of equipment that's getting a lot of use, you may want to shorten it to every 3 months.
Okay.
But if you're keeping records on it again, if you can statistically show that this thing is being stable through all these calibrations, you can actually extend that calibration period out. I'm a lab guy. I've done calibrations for years and stuff, so I know this stuff pretty cold. Okay, so in here we got the acquisition working standards. Whatever you buy you're going to use for calibration is a working standard. It's not a primary standard or a secondary standard. The calibration house has the secondary standards. The primaries are held by the government. Okay, so we have the acquisition standards, how, when we bring it in, even when you bring in a new piece, you have to at least verify it because in transit, something could actually happen to it.
Mhm.
So you want to make sure that you verify it, check the calibration. If you're buying it calibrated, verify it. If it's not calibrated when you purchase it and it doesn't come with a calibration certificate, you have to go through the exercise of calibrating it. And then how to do it for calibrations that were sent out. So like your gauge pins, your gauge blocks, your 1, 2, 3 blocks, stuff like that. That would all go out. Don't send scales out.
Okay.
That's a real problem. Calibrating scales is not like everybody thinks it is. You think, okay, I'll buy a set of calibrated weights, right? And I just put them on there and make sure that it's reading right. There's a NIST handbook. It's called NIST Handbook 44. It's actually called out in here. And you can actually get it for free from NIST. It's 400 pages long, and it's about how to calibrate scales.
Oh, jeez.
But it goes everything from a jeweler scale all the way up to railroad car scales.
Gotcha. Okay, so
But depending on the size of the scale and what type of a scale it is, you may have to do a calibration in quadrants on the weight base. You have to do an ascending scale. You have to do a descending scale. You have to do what they call what is it called? It's where you have a shift from one quadrant to another. Like a quarter of a pound difference between this quadrant and that quadrant, and it has to be calibrated in. You have to do a measurement uncertainty on it, which is a whole different calculation.
Jeez.
So Yeah, yeah. So it's better to bring somebody in to do it, and there's plenty of them down in your area. In fact, I know one that's got, I think, probably a couple of miles from me.
Okay.
Used to be a client of mine, but yeah, I mean they're all over the place. Have them come in, and unless typically scales get done on a yearly basis, unless something happens in between. I mean, if you run into it with a fork truck, you need to have it recalibrated. I mean, the scales today are not as robust as they were back in the day. You go. I mean, if you want good scales, go find an old General Motors plant or Ford plant or Chrysler plant that's closing, and find one of the old Toledo scales. Man, those things are damn near indestructible.
Okay.
And in fact, that's what my lab had, was an old General Motors Toledo scale. And again, it was on a 3-year cycle because it never needed to be calibrated. They used to build really good equipment. I mean, back in the day, that stuff weighed a ton, but man, it held up.
All the stuff back then was better. Oh, held up. They're playing
Yeah.
obsolescence.
Yeah, I mean, your gauge blocks, yeah, you send those out. I don't know if A.A. Jansen is still around, but they used to be over in Southfield or
So you
Auburn
mentioned like the
Hills.
one.
They were in Auburn Hills too.
You mentioned like sending out 1, 2, 3 blocks. What would they do to those if they were out?
Uh, really, there's not much they can do with them if they're out.
And they're cheap enough that.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Now we have some clients that are basically, they buy these little plastic scales for when they're doing their processing. I mean, they're doing cannabis,
Yeah.
so they're weighing things out on these little cheap little plastic scales, but they're calibrated. They buy them calibrated, and I said, these things are, what are you paying for them? You're paying $30 for them. And if you send it out to get it calibrated, it's going to cost you maybe 60, 80, $100 to get it calibrated. You know, so, when you get to the end of the year, put them up on eBay and sell them and buy new calibrated ones.
Yeah.
Don't waste your money. Yeah, they like your gauge blocks, or what we used to call Joe blocks. Um, you know, they check them on a micro caliper, and then they check it with an optical, which is it's basically what it is. It's an optical lens, and they put it on that surface, and depending on the pattern that they see, they can tell how flat it actually is.
Okay.
So calibration is really interesting. I used to love doing calibrations. I'm just that kind of weird person that likes that kind of stuff. Okay, so and then yours ones that are performed in house has to be somebody that knows what they're doing. Um, yeah, guarding against safeguarding. That is a 17025. That's where all your requirements for calibration actually come from, is ISO 17025. Even right down to what has to be on your certificate of calibration. And then your recall program, so that you make sure that this is one of those parts of the elements of the management system that we call an audit stopper, which means that if you get a major in calibration, they will stop the audit. They won't go any further. So if there's a major in calibration, you can't guarantee anything going out the door. So they will stop the audit.
When you say major in calibration, I took that as like you got like certified in learning how to calibrate. So what do you mean by that?
A major is what they call it's a systemic breakdown of the system. In other words, it means that, okay, as far as calibration goes, I've gone out there and I've looked at 10 calipers. And of the 10 I looked at, 6 of them were out of calibration. They were past their calibration time. Or I looked at a combination of micrometers and calipers, and I found, they were out of date or they were out of calibration on both ends. That's a complete breakdown of the system. Nothing is actually working.
Gotcha.
At
Okay.
that point, I can safely say that I can't trust any of this stuff is being calibrated, because I have evidence that there's calibrations that are not being performed in other areas. So I've actually seen it happen once. And
Uh,
of all places, it was at a Delphi plant that it actually happened. It was a huge deal. People got fired over it. Okay. So there are very few things that will stop an audit. This is one of them. Safety is another thing. I went into audit a stamping plant. Um, I won't say where, because you'll probably be able to guess who it was. But I walked in there, and they had blown out a bus bar, and so they decided to run a line and power this press off of another bus bar. But they had a 440 line lying on the floor, running through a puddle of water.
Wow, that's even
And,
worse.
and I saw that, and I said, okay, we're going to stop the audit. Said, when you get your shit together and you get this stuff off of the floor so it's not a hazard to myself or anybody else, I'll come back. So, like I say, it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
That's wild.
Okay, so that's calibration. You ever have any questions on calibration, give me a call, because like I said, I am just such a geek. I love that stuff. Okay, let's see. Let's go over to the forms. Go right here, and we're probably going to have to order them again. Oh, it held the order. Cool. Okay, so Tech Tools is where the blank forms and workbooks are. Now, it does look like there's a lot of forms, but there's a lot less forms than there could be. Because when I design a form, I design it so that it will do as much heavy lifting as possible. So, like the control of non-conforming material, or I mean, not that, the corrective action report. You will see that CAR called out all over the management system. So if it's a problem in internal audit, it's going to go to the CAR. Excuse me. Wow, they're cutting the grass outside. I can tell.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries.
If it's non-conforming material, it's going to be the CAR.
Okay.
So here, give me just a second here.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay. So like I said, when I design the forms, I try to design them to do as much as possible. Like your engineering change here. I'll bring this one up. There's several stages of an engineering change. I don't have to tell you that. So you have the request, you have the order, and then you have the notification. Okay. In most systems, these would all be separate forms. I said, they all are integral to each other. Let's put them all in one form. That way, all the information's together. So we have the engineering request. Who actually, initiated the change? Was it internal customer or supplier? Don't see a lot of suppliers making change or implementing changes, but it does happen. Who initiated engineering, quality, or manufacturing, and then all your part and engineering drawings that are associated with it, reason, the description, and a very simple way of doing the engineering change number. It's in the procedure. It tells you how to put that in. And basically, it's a combination of a date and the part, just to make it easy. And then your request approvals, and then the engineering change order, and then the change approvals, and then your engineering change notification. And then down here, what's your product status disposition? What do you do? When does that engineering change go into effect, and what do I do with the material that I already have? Use the current stock first, or scrap it, or rework it, or scrap all the old stock. So, like I say, you will see that in a lot of forms. It's they're all combined. It's the same reason that we put the RBAC and the control plan together.
Okay.
One directly leads to the other. Have them both in the same document, the same workbook. Okay, so let's go back to the manual here. Okay. The next phase of this is going to be review and revision. Now, a lot of these procedures in here are written exactly the way the standard wants them to be written. Now, on the planning procedures, they're directly connected to a workbook or a form. So, there's no reason to have to go in and spend a lot of time, looking for changes in there, because there's not going to be any. Your operational procedures calibration is what it is. That's the way the standard wants it. That's the way it is. Same with control non-conforming material. Facility equipment and maintenance. Okay, so that is something that's kind of unique to every operation. Everybody does it their own way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that. You're going to want to take a look at that, see if it needs any changes. Handling, preservation, storage is the way it is. Processing, that's another one that is unique to every operation, how they do it within their place. So what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on the significant few rather than the insignificant many. We're going to look at those things that, again, are kind of unique to the way that you do things, to make sure that I've written it correctly. Shipping. Everybody does shipping a little differently. Validation verification is just the way it is. Continual improvement, document control, emergency preparedness and response. Have you take a look at that, because there is a section in there where we need some information. Filing for license, it permits internal external audits, internal external communications, monitoring, reporting, management review, non-conformance to corrective action, purchasing. Take a look at purchasing, just to make sure that there's nothing that gives you heartburn. Security, yeah, look at that. Oh yeah, quoting, ordering, and contract review. Yep, definitely. Take a look at that one. Supplier contractor control is basically the way it is. Training and competence is the way it is. So out of all of these procedures, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8 of them that you have to look at. Okay, so when you're going through the procedure, let's pull up processing. And as we patiently wait for it to load, there we go. Okay, so if you see something in here that, isn't right, or you want it worded differently or something like that, what I want you to do is right after where you want the change made, just simply come in after that and put in the change, and then highlight it in green. Well, highlight it in any color other than yellow. So that way, when we come back to do the review and the revision, I can say, okay, this is what it did say. This is what you wanted to say. That way I can determine, okay, is it going to comply with the requirements of the standard? Is it going to conflict with anything else in the standard? That way I can say, okay, well, it's because when we do the revision, we're going to do it live and we'll do it together. That way, if we have something in here, let's say, okay, you want to make a change here, and say, well, okay, this might put us in the conflict with the standard. So let's figure out a way to reword it or redo it so that it's a compromise between what the standard wants and how you want it to do. It just makes the review and the revision process go a lot faster. That way I can see what it was and what you want it to be. So do that. If you have any questions, right under the revision history, just write in your questions right down there. That way, as we're going through these, then we'll see the questions. We can give you an answer right there. And you don't have to worry about having them on a separate sheet of paper or try to remember what that was. It's going to be right here. Write it down, highlight it in green or yellow, or no, not yellow, green or blue, whatever. Don't do red. Don't do red. Red's almost impossible to read through. So uh just highlight it so it brings it out to my attention, and then we can give you an answer right then and there, and then we can clean it up when we're finished. Now eventually you're going to go through everything. um whoop, got away from me. Yeah, and you're going to have to determine in here, right now, I mean, it's going to be pretty basic who's responsible for this, right? The document manager is the person who would be responsible for making any changes in this document. You know, let's say, who's the document owner or the manager? It's the person that's going to get yelled at if it's wrong. Simple as that. So you're going to put in there by their title as people move. So put in by the title who that person is. Now that's on all of the procedures. Find that. So you'll have to go in and do that. I wouldn't be too worried about that right now. I think the main thing right now, the main priority is to go through these ones that we've highlighted and make sure that I got it right and that there's nothing in there that's going to give you any heartburn, and get them marked up. And then we can proceed to finalize the system. And then you can go back and you can go through the rest of them and determine who is the actual document manager. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Okay, so you only have 8 to do, so I mean that's a lot better than the 20 some. You know,
I'll take that.
or actually, I think there's like 30 some. So we've knocked that down significantly. Like I said, these are written exactly the way the standard wants them to be written. There's really no reason to have to spend a lot of time on them. So we'll just concentrate on the ones that are unique to how you do it. And then as we go along, then we'll go into there, we'll check it, and then we'll highlight these, and then the system will be finished, and then we can start talking about how we go forward and roll this out and get everything ready for certification audit.
Okay.
So, car wise, you working on anything interesting?
Well, it's a hot topic. Yeah, I'm working on trying to get my 93 Cobra Mustang back on the road. It's like, it runs, it's just finishing up some electrical stuff. And then my fiance, I'm building her a car. It's not happening fast enough for her. She's never been into cars. She's just never had any men in her life or women in her life that like cars. So she doesn't really understand what it takes to build a car.
Yeah.
She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Like, she's used to like, here's a pill. Hopefully it works in a couple of days or weeks.
Yeah.
So like I tell her, I was like, there's no magic pill. It's hard work. It's time, So, but yeah, and she has a 91.
What are you building for?
So it's a 91 GT convertible.
Oh, nice.
And she loves pink. So
say what?
Oh, she loves pink. So I convinced her to get away from Barbie pink. And we're doing a 911, the Porsche 911 color called Ruby Stone.
Oh,
Red.
Yeah.
So I showed her that color because I'm like, to me, it's masculine enough, but still on the pinkish side. So she loved that color.
Yeah.
And she was going to do white wheels. And I was like, how about we do black chrome wheels? And she's like, oh, I love that. So it's a little bit more masculine now than it was before, but it's a lot of work.
I've been still looking for a project car.
Yeah,
me and my 2 brothers are we're mechanics from way back,
Okay.
So and my brother is he was a heavy engine mechanic. He could do anything. The guy worked at Buick Experimental for years, and he has a degenerative spine disease, so he can't do a lot. And we wanted to, do something, because he was always building stuff. He built some of the most hellacious cars you ever see. I mean, he built a 1972 Electra 225 that could actually pull the front wheels. That thing was a monster.
Yeah.
He built a Buick GS. That the thing was actually scary to drive. It had so much power. Eventually it twisted the body right off the frame.
What are you thinking about buying? Like, what are you leaning towards?
Well, we're thinking about a Buick, something in the like the 70s or the 80s. We're kind of partial to Regals.
Yeah,
I would love to find an old 1970s boat tail Rivy. Man, that would be like the ultimate.
I'm actually helping a guy right now. He bought a Grand National that was already a kind of a project car for someone, and it has a twin turbo LS7 in it. And it's like 80 millimeter turbos. So we're doing. He wants to do like GNX fender flares on it, but his own spin flares, and we're gonna do them in raw carbon, like gloss carbon, and then we're doing a set of wheels for them. So we're not doing the carbon because we don't have that capability in house, but we're doing all the molds, the design work, and then we're doing the wheels for them. We're doing a
Nice.
like a spin on a Grand National wheel, but but not a Grand National. So it's a 3-piece wheel, 18 in the front, 19 in the rear. Thing's gonna be like wheels are gonna be tucked in a body, but pretty cool car.
Doesn't have that weird brake system on it, does it?
What are you referring to?
That electric master cylinder thing that they had on those things. Oh my God, those things were a nightmare, and you can't get parts for them.
So he switched over to a Willwood system. So I'm assuming he probably just got rid of all of it.
Yeah, I've seen guys try to fix those things, and they're just like impossible to work with.
Yeah, they're just. I mean, I give, especially like GM back then and some of the other car companies. They were really creative with their technology. It's just it wasn't very robust. It's like GM back in the day being the first to heads-up display, right?
Yeah,
like, Now it's becoming commonplace, but they did that a very long time ago. Just it was like looking at a bad, computer. The green text. And,
like an old TRS-80. Yeah.
Well, so I'm young enough, but I'm old enough to remember my brother was like, "Hey, you want to go play video games?" And that was like before the first Nintendo came out. And you had to I remember he had to write all these lines of code just to get into the computer. And then we would play Spy vs. Spy and like different games like that with the controller. It was starts with a C. Compact? I don't remember what the name of the computer was.
Commodore?
Yeah, it's just like all black screen with the green text.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then prior to that, it was the VIC-20.
Yeah.
That's what I started with, was a VIC-20, and then I went to a Commodore.
Okay. So I actually really like my generation a lot because I feel like we had a really interesting blend between seeing early stage technology when it was very raw and rough to what we see now, right? Like by the time I graduated high school, I had a cell phone. But when I was 3, cell phones were, I don't even think there was quite cell phones at that point, but they were like the massive blocks that you saw in people's cars.
Yeah. Yep.
So I got to see kind of a cool transition in technology. So like I grew up more like a Gen X kid because my brother was 4 years older than me. They call me a millennial, but I'm not a millennial. Like, now we're Zennials apparently because we're more like Gen X. I was born in 83, so I grew up very like 70s, early 80s kind of kid. Not, millennials go into like the mid 90s, and it's like that's not even the same person.
Oh, I'm from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
I graduated in 1974, the same year my house was built.
Okay. Yeah, my dad.
I started working with computers in 1973 when we were using punch tapes and punch cards.
I've seen those. I've never used them, but I've seen them.
Yeah, I mean, when computers started coming around more, and I got in on it, learned how to program in BASIC, and I remember that we had that was our final exam. Is we had to make a game, and we had to write it all in BASIC with peaks and pokes, so it made noises and stuff like that, and it would do crazy stuff. And yeah.
While what was able to be done.
Me and a guy named Roland Lovelace wrote the first statistical program for General Motors, and it was called C3PO.
My daughter's grandfather, well, great grandfather. When I first met him, he's like, the first computer I ever developed had more. Your phone has more bytes than the first computer I ever developed, and I met him in 2005, and he said, so he worked for an electronics company. He passed away at 94 years old, just like a couple years ago.
For him.
I know.
Long life.
Yeah, great life. But he worked for an engineering and computer company that actually helped NASA with the first computers in Apollo 13.
Okay.
Really cool stuff. And he was just like, there's more bytes in your flip phone than there is in, Apollo 13. It's like,
Oh
wow.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It's yeah, that was
wow.
interesting.
They got back.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I got into building my own computers, and yeah, it was a fun time going through
Yeah.
all that. So we did. I had a Beowulf ring. You've probably never heard of that, have you?
I'm not.
It's the first multitasking simulation. And what you would do is you would have several computers, and you would have them all chained together,
Okay.
and each one of them did a different function, so that it could actually multitask, which computers back then could not do. I mean, once you were doing something, you couldn't do anything else. So this one allowed you to multitask because each computer had its own function in that ring, and it was interesting. So and then they started coming out with the multitasking chips, but that's where that whole idea
Mhm.
originated, was with the Beowulf ring. But cool stuff, cool stuff.
There's a lot of cool stuff out
But
there.
yeah, I still prefer wrenching on a car.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
let me go ahead and stop the recording here. There we go.